Good morning. Welcome to the North Shore Unitarian Church, where our mission is to empower people to live with greater depth, meaning, and purpose. My name is Lindsay, and I am both your Sunday service associate and acting lay chaplain. And what I love about this community is the connection between people and the vibrant, dynamic ideas that are shared when we get together, and especially when we invite special guest speakers to be among us, such as we have today. I am very pleased that we have Carolyn Koehnline with us this morning. Carolyn is a member of the Bellingham Unitarian Fellowship, and she's also a licensed psychotherapist, journal therapist, life coach, and the creator of Gentle Approach Coaching. Carolyn has spent the last 27 years supporting people in navigating transitions and releasing excess baggage from their homes, heads, hearts, and schedules to make room for what matters. She has written 3 books, and her most recent is called Clearing Clutter as a Sacred Act: Essays, Poems, and Practices. She is on the faculty of Therapeutic Writing Institute and has been a key presenter several times for the Elliott Institute UU Family Camp. She's visiting here today with her wife, Dominique. Welcome, Carolyn and Dominique.
Good morning. Spring cleaning. All morning I have been pulling skeletons out of the closet, the old bones that keep me awake at night, the old faces I see in my dreams. But in the closet, there are old letters, old clothes that don't fit, boxes of souvenirs, postcards of favorite places. Dust stirs in the corners like a secret heart trying to beat again. Wreckage from an old war, I sit like a widow, sifting through it, touching the skeletons for the last time. It is spring and time to let go of them. Let the closet billow with fresh air. And if it's true that the past is always with us, then let it be invisible as an angel. But first, I must bury these old bones. Good morning. We're going to start out this morning with a hymn that is, well, I actually have a hobby of writing clutter songs to familiar tunes. Ironically, this is to the tune of my favorite things. And it's called This Is Clutter. And let's begin. Papers I pile up for ages and ages. Books I will read, some are missing some pages. Puzzles with pieces I never will find. These are some cluttering things on my mind. All of the yeses I should have said no to. All of the messes I still have to go through. Tools for the home.
I attended a drum circle at Spanish Banks to celebrate the summer solstice and National Indigenous Peoples Day. I had spent the day in a workshop with my business mentor, had homework to do, and had to get up early for another full day session on Saturday, and I could have easily done the practical thing and gone home, gone to bed early. But this day holds special meaning, and I felt deeply called to engage in ritual. I went to the gathering by myself, didn't coordinate with anyone, I never met the host in person, and did not expect that I would know anyone at all. I'm not shy, so joining a random group of people for an evening doesn't bother me. So after making some friendly new connections, it was a bonus that not one, but two people that I know showed up. And I had never actually fully expected to meet them again after parting ways. So to find them there in person was a lovely surprise, and it was a lovely evening. So today, I dedicate the lighting of our flaming chalice to friendships, old and new, that can be kindled when we make space for what our heart, instead of our mind, wants us to do. We kindle this flame as a symbol of our gathering.
May the light of understanding illuminate our darkness. May the warmth of sharing bring us peace.
I'm so excited to be here with you this morning, and happy to be talking with you about clearing clutter as a sacred act, because that's a topic that's so near and dear to my heart. For a long time, one of my specialties has been helping people with clutter. Even though when I was a little girl with a messy room, it never occurred to me that that was something I was going to do when I grew up. I got interested in it when I was in graduate school, studying to be a therapist, learning to look at the world through psychological eyes, and at the same time, I was making my living with a small house cleaning business. So I had the privilege of being behind the scenes in a lot of different homes. And even though those homes were occupied by fairly functional, intelligent, creative people, I saw lots of versions of clutter. Clutter that grew out of the busyness and overwhelm of life. Clutter that grew out of confusion and mixed feelings. And of course, it got me thinking about my own clutter struggles and about the fact that we live in a culture that teaches us constantly that more stuff will make us happier, and more gadgets will make our lives easier, and the busier we are, the more important we are. We learn an awful lot about how to accumulate stuff, and not very much about how to let go of anything. We learn to do a lot of things quickly, but we don't learn much about quiet, or being present, or how to shift gears, or how to prepare for things or bring closure to them. I got very interested in the meanings that objects hold for us and our relationship with our living spaces. And over the years, I began to see that the clutter clearing process could be a kind of transformation ritual. It's a mundane act, it's a practical act, but it can be a powerful one. This past year, I wrote a book called Clearing Clutter as a Sacred Act. And the book actually insisted that I have the word sacred in the title, even though I resisted that some. I wasn't quite sure, but working on the book taught me what that meant. And so I'm really excited to share that with you this morning. And I want to start by giving you a bird's eye view of the territory that I focus on a lot in my work, with this mandala that I created recently. And if you look, Up in the top left quadrant, you'll see clearing clutter. That refers to the sorting process by which you determine what you're keeping and what you're releasing from your home, head, heart, and schedule at various crossroads of your life, where you ask yourself, do I love it? Do I need it? Does it resonate with who I am today? Do I want to be the caretaker of this object for the rest of my life? It's often a challenging process, practically, physically, emotionally, mentally, but it can lighten your load and it can free up energy. It can also help you identify the true treasures that deserve your time, space, energy, and attention. Then if you look at the top right quadrant, navigating transitions. As you know, life has many seasons and many goodbyes. Change is to be expected. We have to keep adjusting and reconfiguring to cope with it. And going through those changes, the inner changes and the outer changes, can sometimes feel brutal, but it can also hone you and help you clarify who you are and what's important to you. So going through the process of clutter clearing can provide a way to say some needed goodbyes and a way to physically and metaphorically open up space for the next chapter. I think it's really interesting that I'm giving you this talk on the last day before you take a break, you make some space, and then you have a new beginning. And you're letting go of old pews, you're letting go of past ministers, and making the way for a new one. It's just such a ripe moment in your congregation. On the lower left, you'll see writing processes, and I have that in there because I'm a certified journal therapist, which means I'm trained in a lot of brief, focused writing processes. Clutter often represents inner confusions and conflicts and uncomfortable feelings. We tend to stuff into corners and into boxes and into back rooms things that represent decisions we don't want to have to make and feelings we don't want to have to feel. And going through the sorting process can stir up a lot. Sometimes a focused 5-minute writing can bring clarity. I invite people to dedicate a journal to being a clutter-clearing companion and to project onto that journal the kindest, wisest, most patient guide and companion they can imagine. Sometimes it can be as simple as writing down a really practical question like, what should I do next? Or, what can I do with this exercise bike that I never ended up using? Writing can help you just write the answer for 5 minutes and see what comes out. And something about writing helps you bring your full attention to the question, and often fresh ideas will come that are really useful. But there are also deeper writing processes, often brief, but deeper, that can help you navigate the confusing territory of dealing with more emotionally loaded objects. And I'll talk about that a little more in a few moments. So we have clearing clutter, navigating transitions, writing processes, or any practices that help you find clarity, find your way when you're confused. And then down in the right-hand corner, you'll see a sacred stance. The clutter-clearing process stirs up deep questions. Who am I now? What is enough? What if I don't live forever? What if my kids don't want everything I want to leave to them? If I let go of this chapter of my life, will there be another chapter? And what if you treated this process as a way of engaging with those deeper questions? What if you viewed clutter clearing as a sacred, meaningful process of self-exploration, one that can help you learn and grow and more fully express who you're meant to be? One way to make it sacred is to dedicate your process to something meaningful. This is for my children who deserve plenty of space in their own lives. This is for Buddha, who practiced non-attachment. This is for my marriage. Or you could find a meaningful way to name it, like revealing the beauty in my life, reclaiming spaciousness, making room for my muse, making room for love. It's easy to get bogged down in clutter clearing, and when you lose heart, get overwhelmed, or feel lost in the process, I encourage you to use a small devotional act to infuse your process with meaning and to connect you with inner and outer resources. Lighting a candle, saying a prayer, or reading a poem or a quote, doing a 5-minute writing can prepare your heart and mind to re-enter the process in a different way. It can rekindle your inspiration when you start to get bogged down. Now you'll notice that all around the outside of the circle, self-compassion, 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 that's because you just can't have enough of it for this process. There are just so many opportunities for self-compassion when you're going through your clutter. Self-compassion is basically the ability to meet yourself with warmth and kindness when you're suffering, when you're having a hard time. Clutter is by nature something you probably feel like you should have dealt with a long time ago. You may, as you go through it, find evidence of areas of your life you've neglected, past mistakes, paths not taken, disappointments, resentments. It helps so much if at such times you can give yourself a dose of unconditional love. A lot of people worry that if they're kind to themselves around their inadequacies and mistakes, that they won't grow and change, that they'll get lazy and self-indulgent, that they won't get anything done. But there's actually a lot of research on self-compassion that says very clearly that being kind to yourself in your hardest moments actually makes you more productive and more accountable. So when you look at a pile of unfinished business or evidence of past mistakes, it can be so tempting to say, "What is wrong with you? You are such a loser." But that will just make you go limp, or get oppositional, or go out shopping. Imagine instead that when you come across some evidence of your inadequacies, you place a hand on your heart and you say to yourself, "Oh, honey, this is hard for you. But you are so not alone. Everybody has struggles behind the scenes. Some of them are very similar to the way you're struggling right now. And I love you no matter what. In the past, it's been too hard for you to face this. Good for you for showing up and facing it now." Can you feel how that might be more helpful than trashing yourself in that moment? A little warmth and kindness can keep you hanging in there when the going gets rough. So there's self-compassion surrounding clearing clutter, navigating transitions, writing processes, and taking a sacred stance. And out of all that, right in the center, your emerging vision. You are opening space for clarifying what matters to you, and your vision of who you are and what you're here to do may become clearer. You may feel more able to bring it to full expression. New possibilities may present themselves. So how do you do it? Can you imagine a way to go through your belongings and efficiently sort them while also honoring that they carry meanings for you? Can you imagine making clear choices to release some of the belongings from a loved one you've lost and finding a way to do it that doesn't feel like you're just throwing them out? Can you imagine finding a way to honor the various seasons of your life without holding on to every artifact from every chapter? Can you picture a rhythm of periodically releasing some of your belongings and commitments the way some trees release their leaves each year? And if you were going to turn clutter clearing into a sacred act, how would you do that? What would help you stay connected to your bigger intentions? What would help you to access inner and outer resources and listen to your wisest voices? How could you transform a burdensome, overwhelming task into a powerful transformation ritual? I don't have an exact recipe for you. There is no straight line I would suggest for you to go from A to B to C to get to your clutter clearing goals. I picture it more like sailing, where you get as clear as you can about what you want, about what you're steering towards. More spaciousness, more peace, more love, more connection, whatever it is. You do your best to keep that in your sight as you deal with the wind, the weather, the tides, your life circumstances, your emotional ups and downs, the people in your life. You keep steering towards what you think you're wanting. And any progress you make in that direction is a victory. It was never meant to be a straight line, because this is life we're talking about. But I do have some things that I don't suggest. And notice if you tend to do any of these things. Approach the endeavor with a combination of enormous expectations and a total lack of confidence in your ability to make changes. Be very vague about the goal. Don't put the sessions on your calendar. Try to do everything at once. Don't take breaks. Sit, stand, or squat in an uncomfortable position with very poor light and set things up as inconveniently as possible. Start with the hardest stuff first. Pretend that you're not thirsty or hungry and work past the point of exhaustion. Focus on how much you haven't accomplished and how much more there is to do. And criticize yourself throughout the process. I just wonder if any of that sounds at all familiar. Okay, so what's the alternative? Here's a sample of someone taking 5 minutes to just write down what I would describe as a gentle plan. At 10 o'clock Saturday morning, I'll work for 2 hours, focusing on the stuff piled up on my desk. That's my only focus. I don't have to worry about the rest of my office or any other rooms in the house. I'll start by doing a quick sketch of my desk and what I'd want to have on it. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm dedicating this session to my writing life. I'll have a cup of coffee in my favorite mug, just the way I like it. I'll also put on some instrumental jazz that energizes me without making me too hyper, probably guitar. My hope is to remove and relocate anything that doesn't belong there, and to be very intentional about what gets to live on my desk. My fear is that I'll get overwhelmed and bogged down with papers and be unproductive. If that starts to happen, I'll take a 5-minute break and drink water and see if I need to write for a few minutes in my journal to get clarity. If I don't finish the project before noon, I'll schedule a follow-up session for Tuesday evening. When the 2 hours are up, I'll celebrate by meeting Anne at the park. She's the perfect person to do that with because she doesn't judge me. She'll let me brag about my efforts, and she'll be genuinely excited to hear about them. So, what if you made your version of a gentle plan. What if you started by lighting a candle and dedicating your process to something meaningful to you? What if you build in breaks so your brain could rest and you could regain perspective? And what if one of your sorting categories was labeled emotional, so that you could avoid the trap of getting swamped by emotions when you pick up that old sweater or that hat box or the love letters from the spouse that divorced you? Instead of forcing a decision or getting lost in a reverie that takes you down a very scary rabbit hole, you just put the item into the emotional box as quickly as possible and then turn your attention back to your efficient sorting process. What if that allowed you to separate efficient sorting time from the slower, deeper process of emotional processing, especially with objects that trigger confusion or deeper emotional responses? When it comes time to address things in the emotional box, there are many things you can do to process those emotions, to reclaim the energy that they hold for you, and to help you make a clearer choice about what to do with them. Often, a single belonging can represent whole categories of stuff, so it's not like you have to do this with every item that's emotional for you. Here's an example of a middle-aged woman doing a journal dialogue with a stuffed tiger that belonged to her now grown-up son. So she's writing both parts. She's just making it up. Hello, stuffed tiger. Are you willing to talk with me? Tiger, sure, why not? Why are you still in my life? Well, what do you think about when you look at me? I think about when Bobby was little. I also think about when our dachshund Gus chewed on you. I think about how I never thought time would go so fast. Tiger, do you think that by hanging on to me you can keep Bobby from growing up and Gus from dying? Well, maybe. I guess that doesn't really make any sense since those things have already happened. It's okay. Emotions aren't logical. But I do think it's time for me to go. I'm satisfied I did a good job of comforting Bobby. Now I want to help you open some space in your life by saying a loving goodbye. It's amazing how often the objects will actually want to go, but not always. And here's an example of a letter to a hat box. Dear hat box, I think you are so beautiful. You come from an elegant era, and you remind me of my New York City aunts. I love your colors. You are such a satisfying shape, but you are one of so many boxes that I seem to hang on to. Why can't I let you go? I don't even wear hats. And it's signed, your ambivalent admirer. It can be helpful to follow such a letter by inviting the object to write back. Even though you're the one doing the writing, it opens the way for your own inner wisdom to come forward. The hat box may have some surprising suggestions. You're right, I am exceptionally beautiful. I'm probably your very favorite box. I'm a treasure for you, a piece of art, an inspiration. If you give yourself full permission to keep me, you'll be able to loosen your grip on some of those boxes that aren't as beautiful or unique. Just know you're keeping the best of the best. And it's okay if you don't keep a hat in me. What if you gave me a real place in your home where people could see me? What if you displayed me proudly as a work of art? I am the holder of your dream of being a designer. Maybe I could be the place where you put little notes about your artistic ideas. Sometimes it helps to write the story of the object, how it came into your life, what it means to you. It doesn't have to be a long story, a paragraph or two, but a gathering of such stories might become more of a family treasure than a storage unit full of stuff that somebody has to figure out what to do with. It can also help to create an art piece or shrine that represents a person or a chapter in your life that's been hard to let go. creating a quilt or a shadow box that gathers and honors what the person or the experience meant to you, may free you from feeling like you have to preserve and stuff into your life things that don't really fit or have a place there. Tears may come as you do this, and that's okay. Practice compassion with whatever feelings come. That's the emotional clutter that got stuck at some point and it just wants to move and make room for more joy in your life. These emotions are helping you make way for a new beginning. And speaking of new beginnings, if you're clearing clutter from your home or your schedule, what are you making space for? If you have an inkling of something you want to bring more fully into your life, you might want to make a ritual of creating a space that's dedicated to it. When I wanted to bring a regular journaling practice more fully into my life, I created a space very like this, with a wooden table, a little bouquet of flowers, a fresh cup of smoothly flowing pens, a little slot underneath for my journal, and that space invited me to come sit down and write. And when I would lose connection with my journaling, it would be a nice ritual to go and polish the desk, get a fresh little bouquet of flowers, get rid of the dwindling pens and get some fresh ones, and just tend it a little bit. And that was a way of tending my writing life. So you might want to think about if there are spaces you want to create or existing spaces, it would be a powerful ritual for you to tend. Now, even with all that I've shared with you about clearing clutter as a sacred act, I'm very aware that it's not an easy thing that I'm asking. Goodbyes can be hard. And some people have an especially hard time letting go for various reasons. But let me close now with a poem which I wrote as a message to anyone who has a hard time with goodbyes. It's called When Closure Feels Wrong. Just in case you are bound in place by the belief that to move forward is to abandon and betray all that came before, listen. After you've turned towards the past and said thank you and goodbye, spoken what words of forgiveness you could honestly say, asked for absolution, released what was dead weight, and placed the true treasures into your pack, you can turn and take a step in a fresh direction. When you do, my dear one, I promise all the love that came before will be in you and with you every step of the way. Let's sing together. Come and find the quiet center. We're going to sing the first verse for you and then just sing. There is only one verse, so we'll sing it through twice. Just join us when you're ready. Oh. Wait, sorry. Come and find the quiet center in this crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are free. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our eyes that we may see all the things that really matter. Be at peace and simply be. Come and find the quiet center in this crowded life we lead. Find the room for hope to enter. Find the frame where we are free. Clear the chaos and the clutter. Clear our
Thank you so much, Carolyn, for that beautiful message. I feel like I want to clear a whole bunch in my space to come down and visit you in Bellingham. You are so wise. Thank you so much.